for citizens living near the border between North and South Korea, it was a noise frequently heard. Even though the two countries had signed an armistice over 50 years ago to cease hostilities, it seemed as though nothing had changed. But alas, life continued on. DMZ border skirmishes still claim lives, and tensions between the North and the South are still high-strung. Is having an armistice even worth it when it hasn't served its purpose? The Korean War Armistice Agreement of 1953 aimed to diplomatically stop hostilities, but was not effective in creating peace between North and South Korea. South Korea did not officially sign the armistice. The armistice was violated and disregarded by both nations, and debates over their border still rage on today. In 1392, the Kingdom of Joseon was founded. Prior to 1870, Korea had been under the Chinese sphere of influence. Japan pressured and forced China away from Korea. In 1897, the Korean Kingdom of Joseon was renamed the Korean Empire. The Japan-Korea Protectorate Treaty made Korea a protector of Japan in 1905, and Korea was annexed by Japan 5 years later. Japanese rule suppressed Korean culture. Policies that benefited the Japanese were passed. When Emperor Gojong of Korea died in 1919, non-violent independence rallies against Japan sprouted nationwide. As a result, Japan strengthened its military rule and tried to exterminate Korea as a nation. Japanese rule dominated Korean efforts, so little to no diplomatic measures were taken to loosen Japanese rule. The Soviets declared war on Japan in 1945, which was fought on Korean territory. Japan withdrew from the war, giving the Soviets an opportunity to take over the Korean peninsula. To prevent the Soviets from gaining too much power, the United States proposed a division on the 38th parallel. U.S. troops occupied the south, and Soviet troops occupied the north of Korea. Two separate governments were established in Seoul and Pyongyang by Syngman Rhee and Kim Il-sung, respectively. The war itself lasted just 3 years, but nearly 5 million people died, most of them Korean civilians. The Korean Armistice Agreement was signed on July 27, 1953. It was signed by General Nam Il, Lieutenant General William Harrison Jr., and Pang Dukwai. No South Korean representative signed the armistice, due to Syngman Rhee's failure to accept the fact that he could not unite both Koreas by force. The main two negotiators were General Nam Il and Vice Admiral Charles Turner Joy. The purpose of the armistice was to cease all military hostilities between South and North Korea. The most recognized agreement in the armistice was a division of North and South Korea at the 38th parallel. It also outlined many agreements and restrictions that ranged from a demilitarized zone to armament and soldier limits. The creation of the Military Armistice Commission aimed to keep both sides true to the armistice. It would also be enforced by commanders on both sides. Though the main goal of the armistice was to create equality between the two sides, many of the agreements were forced and were not fully agreed upon. There are many more reasons why the armistice failed. According to Lieutenant William Harrison Jr. and General Nam Il, the armistice is aimed to create a ceasefire between North and South Korea only until a final peace settlement has been reached. Due to this reason, the armistice was not a stable base for peace between the Koreas. You can't build a castle on a sheet of glass. As if to prove the ineffectivity of the armistice and the need for a different peace treaty, North Korea itself violated the treaty 221 times. Throughout a 10-year period, 2000-2010, North Korea conducted 5 military attacks towards South Korea. These attacks included the torpedoing of Chomun, a South Korean warship, as well as the artillery shelling on Yeonpyeong, a border island. This clearly shows that the armistice was ineffective and impractical. Nevertheless, the armistice was signed and negative effects ensued. After the war, and because of the armistice, Operation Big Switch launched to return prisoners of war to their countries and families. It started on August 5th, 1953, and lasted until December of 1953. 88,596 total prisoners were released. During the post-war reconstruction of both Koreas, both economic and physical struggles continued. Money in circulation in both Koreas increased by 24 folds between June 24, 1950 and July 31, 1953. As of December 31, 1953, it again increased by 42 times. After the war, the overissue of money was common. Due to this fact, inflation increased by almost 50-fold. Hyperinflation was one of the many reasons why the economy of both North and South Korea collapsed almost immediately after the war. After the post-war period, South Korea was able to improve their economy, while North Korea remained in an economic trough that caused their citizens to live in immense poverty. The Korean War led to the steady increase of capitalist influence around the world. Being the capitalist nation of the two, South Korea quickly became a leading country in the world's economy. Advancements are shown even in the present day with popular Korean media such as K-pop and K-dramas. Internationally, the Korean War was the first war that the United States did not win outright. This increased their military budget from $48 billion to $60 billion in just the span of 2 years. The countries did not reach a stable agreement, and defectors from the North come to the South for safety. The relationship between the two countries is still strained, and North Korea has stated that it will continue to treat South Korea as their enemy. To conclude, the spontaneous decision to create the Korean Armistice of 1953 was wrong due to the fact it was ineffective in fulfilling its initial purpose, to stop hostilities between North and South Korea. It resulted in even heavier conflicts and further border disputes. Through many fatalities, debates, and failed diplomacy, the Korean Armistice was formed just to be disregarded.